I'm going to do a video about why the post office needs to replace UPS and FedEx rather than the other way around, which we are headed, unfortunately. The unfortunate thing is that America has become so militantly privatized that we're not willing to see the forest for the trees when it comes to productivity and utility. What we have is we have a conflict of the profit motive versus the production motive. We need to separate the two because the two are not mutually inclusive, despite what people want to believe. Babies First economics always seems to make out that profit incentive will include productive incentive, and that's simply not the case. In fact, quite the opposite. The largest examples of productivity were nations where Wally profit was illegalized, such as the Soviet Union, such as any third world country. Most of where you get your stuff comes from third world countries that have much harsher regulations and much more corrupt totalitarian governments than we do. So, and that's why. Because they produce the goods, we take advantage of them. Now, we can still have those things and not rely on the enslavement of them, but I'm not going to talk about that here. What I'm going to talk about here is that we would be better off with state utility. There was a time in American history where many things were considered public goods and services, and not only provided by the state, but only provided by the state, and they did well under the state. But somewhere along the way, we got this idea that it would be a good idea to privatize everything. And, just because you're fluent in economics doesn't mean you automatically side with the free market. It doesn't mean you automatically side with the entrepreneur. The state is an apparatus in itself. The state is capable of producing capital in itself. The edgy anarchist kids love to use the term state capitalist. What the hell is wrong with state capitalism? What the hell is wrong with the idea of the state being the cornerstone of your marketplace? What is bad about that? And I could go into the micro details of why the post office is better than FedEx or UPS. It's cheaper, it's faster, it gets the order right more often, and it's pro-environment. You ever get a package from UPS, they have like an entire box full of that non-biodegradable styrofoam that isn't going to go anywhere for thousands of years, versus, the post office that's going to put one little air cushion in there that, yes, it's plastic, but it's a much more acceptable plastic that can melt down and has air in it. It's much more disposable than that styrofoam shit. And on top of it, it's cheaper, it's more efficient, etc. However, a lot of this has to do with where you live. A lot of this has to do with your own personal experiences. That in itself cannot define an economy. It's a good argument, but there's got to be more to it on a macro level. So, the macro level as to why the post office should replace FedEx and UPS is productivity. You ever order anything from UPS? It takes like 2 goddamn weeks no matter where you live. And that's because UPS doesn't work on the weekends at all. Even the post office, which guarantees its workers Sundays off and is heavily unionized, still operates on Saturdays. How is it that the private market is giving people more days off than the state? It ain't like the private market cares about, the state it ain't like the private market cares about its workers having to go see their families, you go on Christmas break, anything like that. They'll fire you if you do that shit. So why all of a sudden do they guarantee 2 days off for everybody? To cut costs. Their main incentive is the profit incentive, not the productivity incentive. Like it or not, you're going to probably be ordering from UPS, whether you choose to do it or not, because when you order something online, you don't necessarily choose who you order from. You might get it on that website, you might get it from that business, but they are in contract with UPS or FedEx, or maybe they'll use the post office. But most likely, they're going to use FedEx or UPS, and they got a contract with them so that they can get, special privileges. They'll be on top priority and things like that. and the cost is weighed down on you. You take the burden of them only working 5 days out of the week, if that, because technically they still got to put the order in. So let's just say they only work 4 days out of the week. And on top of that, you get the burden of the costs because they're contracted with them and they don't have to pay the costs. So there's all these things as opposed to if you just paid your damn taxes and you had a post office that sent it to everybody universally, equally, and most effectively. Now, I know someone out there is going to want to argue that it doesn't do it the most effectively. Why would you think that? Again, they work 6 days out of the week, not 4 days out of the week. And they have all the incentive for productivity, not profit. There's no profit involved in the post office. It simply exists as an element of the state. Now, some people seem to think that profit is the only way people will do anything, but that's not the case. Does the fire department do it for the profit motive? No, there was a time in history where the fire department was privatized, and it was terrible. And then we made it into a public utility, and it does its job well. It even does things it doesn't even have to do. But you're going to tell me that the profit incentive is what motivates people. And that's the problem. We have not yet determined there is a difference between a profit motive and a productivity motive. Now, if you, as an individual, say that you have a profit motive for what you do, you want nicer things, you want the bitches, you want the money, I can understand that. Anyone can understand that. We all have our primal urges. We all have our cardinal desires. But that is not what an economy should be based off of. The economy should be based off of productivity, human rights, and social equality. And we don't have any of those three elements. And we can't get the other two elements until we get productivity situated. When we have productivity situated, where we are producing at a maximum gains, then we can worry about equality, then we can worry about, social rights and things like that. Because we're no longer bound to what's the most profitable. As long as we are under profit motive, we will never be doing things for the sake of ourselves, of the workers, of the people's will, of the law. Yes, even the law will be broken for the sake of the profit motive. And that's not a way to live. That is not a way to function. But, getting past that hurdle is a tough burden. It is a bitch to convince people that there is a difference between wanting more productivity and more effective utility and just wanting cartoon communism. They assume that just because you want more state, that you want to be like some video game like Red Alert or some shit. And no, that's simply not the case. I can make the same argument that anyone that argues for privatization is just some stupid anarcho-capitalist kid. Never read an economic book in his life. Never, took a class. Never went online to watch a video. Just kind of, maybe read one book, and that was Ayn Rand, and then from then on, talked out of his ass. I could say the same damn thing. But I'm not going to argue with them. I'm not even going to humor the argument. I'm simply going to say the state does it better. I have personal experience with the state doing better. I have pretty solid arguments of why the state does it better. And the state continues to do things better. And the less we depend on the state, proof is in the pudding that we have statistically less productivity and less efficiency than we ever did before. So, we need to let the state swallow FedEx and UPS. We need to let them take over them, seize their assets, seize their factories, seize everything that they own, and take it as themselves and become the only means available for delivery service. And yes, that is a state monopoly. There's nothing wrong with monopoly. Monopolies happen all the time. You live under a monopoly. You go to get diamonds for your bitch that's going to divorce you in a month. The diamond mining industry is a monopoly. These sunglasses are under a monopoly because the glass industry is under a monopoly. And those are under privatized monopolies, which is far worse because it's still under the profit motive than the production motive of the state. So if the state was to own these glasses, they'd be cheaper. If the state was to own diamonds, they'd probably be used for industrial purposes and not to wear a pretty ring around your bride. So that's really all I need to say. And if you like my videos, please subscribe to my Twitter, subscribe to this channel. You know the drill.